we didn't announce this, and B, it's Sunday afternoon, so surely you have lots of things to do with your life.
And see, we're not that
And
important.
we're not important. But we're not even gonna wait. We're not in the same frame. I wish we could. Nope, can't do that. We'll try to scoot closer. Maybe we can scoot closer this way. We're not even gonna wait for anyone to get on because this is kind of for us and anyone who sees this. I guess it can be for you too. Maybe it will speak to you, but it's for us. And really, just I wanted to put all my thoughts in one place for if I wanted to share with anybody that I didn't have an opportunity to have like a whole conversation with. And so this allows me to put it in one place. And I had a conversation with somebody recently that's in my life that was having a hard time understanding why I would quit midwifery for a short time. And so if you're not aware, I have another video that talks a little bit about I took a break from birth work with another friend of mine who's taking a break from birth work, and we went into why. And from there, my business partners had asked me if I would share on social media that I would be taking a break. And so from there, even more questions have been asked. And so I am planning to take a break from midwifery. I'm a midwife in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I've been in birth work for 11 years. And I've decided to take a break for really the next year is what I say. But the thing is with due dates, they're in your care 9 to 10 months, even further if you go into postpartum, almost 11 months. So in order for me to take off even just a few months where I can like literally turn my phone off and put my phone into a drawer, I have to take off at minimum a year. So what that looks like is we've decided, Robert and I together, after many conversations, have decided that I will not be taking any more due dates as of now. My last person is actually due one of the very last days in December, and then kind of to be determined when I'll open back up for due dates, which as of now I'm kind of saying like loosely middle of the year next year. So I am very much so still working, and I will be even working when I'm not taking my own clients. I will be working for my good friend Bethany Stricker. She's with North Texas Midwifery, and seeing people for her one day a week and just helping her out with births and just anything that she needs so that I can still make an income and still be involved in midwifery. And I love midwifery. So just to kind of clear all of that up.
Not retirement.
Not retirement. I never said that in my post, and I've had so many people say, I thought you retired, or congratulations on your mini retirement.
Apparently you implied it.
I don't know. I must have said something wrong. But okay, that's the backstory. So the next story is I've had a few people just like really not understand why I would do this. And I think that it comes from a place of them knowing that like I enjoy my job. I think I'm pretty good at it. And some of these people are people who would want to pursue this line of work themselves. And so I think it can be really hard to see somebody that you thought worked really, really hard to get somewhere and is like where you hope you can be one day, just kind of like throw it all away. And let me tell you that there's definitely been moments of me worrying that that's what I'm doing. And I've been trying to figure out how to like put my whole story together for several months now. And through a conversation with a friend last week and her asking me and like really not understanding why I would do this and me having to like share the whole thing beginning to end, it just made me realize that I felt like I was ready to maybe put all the pieces together. And so I asked Robert to do it with me, and it is our anniversary. Don't worry, we have a whole day. But in order to do this, I needed some time for us. I didn't want to do it by myself because a lot of like where we're headed and what we're doing is both of us. Mm-hmm. And he's been so supportive and everything. And so I asked him to do it with me. And we also needed a place without our children. So this just worked out. And it really worked out because the conversation I had happened last week, and I realized, okay, I'm ready to share the whole thing. So I'm hoping I don't leave anything out. I'm hoping that really the Holy Spirit moves through the story and I don't leave out any important pieces that would be important to somebody that might hear this and ask Robert too to interject as well as he sees fit. We'll see if you see fit or when you see fit.
Just here for silent support.
Silent support. Okay, I'm trying to think of like when to begin with it. But I've been in birth work for 11 years. And I came to it after the birth of my first baby that was relatively traumatizing, and I didn't feel supported. We didn't feel supported just because of things happened that were not planned. And so I got into doula work and loved that, was really good at it, and got to a place where you know so much that it starts to be traumatizing to experience things that you feel like could be avoided, especially in the hospital setting. And so I sat with that for a couple years, and in that time started a nonprofit. I think that was like my way to channel some of that productive energy somewhere. And so I started a nonprofit with a friend that supports families who receive a terminal diagnosis in pregnancy called Labor of Hope. And did that for a little bit, but I've learned something about myself as I'm good at casting vision and good at like getting people on board with something. I really wasn't into the like, let me run it. So I don't. And my friends run it, who are great. And so that's not really something I do much anymore. I'm involved, but I don't do much. They do it all. Basically, I'm saying I don't need to take credit for anything. They do it all. And so then in that time, I decided to go to the farm, which if you've ever heard of the business of being born, some people are familiar with the farm. And I went there to do an assistant midwife training, thinking I'll just add that to like an experience list. And while I was there, I was like 2 days in, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be a midwife. Now, people had asked me before if I wanted to be a midwife, and every time I was like, no, no way, because there's a lot of liability in it. And what I would say is I'm just not ready to lose a mom or a baby, because birth is life and death, and I can't deal with that. But being there, I felt inspired, and I felt like I could do it. I knew a lot, being there with people. I was surprised like how much I knew already. And so right then and there, I texted the person that I was hoping would take me on as a student, and she said yes. In that time, I didn't really understand like how hard it is to get a midwife to take you on as a student. And I'm so grateful that she said yes. I'm grateful to who it was. She is a strong woman of God with a lot of life experience, and I couldn't have done those years without her being my preceptor, honestly. And she's still like my mom, a midwife, so she still gets me out of trouble, if you will. Call her at early o'clock. I need this help doing this thing, or answer this question for me. And so she invested a lot of time in her life to me. And about a year into midwifery training, I remember having a moment with her of just like, I don't know if I'm actually like called to do this. I'm still kind of scared. I had just like set aside those fears, and wasn't sure if this is what I was supposed to do. And we just had a really long, good conversation out front of one of our clients' houses. And she talked to me a lot about how like not all decisions are like black and white. Sometimes there's like a gray area, and like you just operate, you operate in a godly way, like in a Holy Spirit driven way, in just the area in which you're performing, right? And so this may not be a right decision or wrong decision, or I'm called to do it or I'm not, but like I can, try to think of the word, because we talked about this earlier. Like I can still do a lot of good work for the Lord no matter what, right? So we talked about that, and I don't remember all the conversation that we had that day, but I just remember she had said some things to me that I left going like, okay, like I'm supposed to be a midwife. Like I'm really good at this. It comes naturally for me. I love it. It's worth like leaving my family for when I have to leave. There were a lot of reasons. So I finished midwifery school and got licensed right before 2020 happened. And that was a little insane to be a brand new midwife during that time. And basically it was like everything we learned, we had to like unlearn in some ways and learn a new thing. So that was a little nuts. And we had hoped to try to have another baby when I finished. And so we actually moved that timeline up a little because we couldn't go anywhere. So let's try for a baby. We had one. And so we had her at the end of 2022, and I was a busy midwife that whole time, pregnant. And it wasn't necessarily easy practicing midwifery pregnant, but I wasn't like super stressed, would you say? Like there were stressful moments because I was like having contractions, and so I was trying not to like have my baby early. But like as a midwife, that wasn't stressful. In that time, we started homeschooling our kids, and we realized we wanted more space. And so after we had our daughter at the beginning of 2023, we said we'd really like to move. And it worked out for us to move to the area we were hoping for. We took over a family property. We bought his dad's house. Just kind of really worked out. He was looking to move, and we were looking to move to that area. And so we said, can we buy it? He said yes, and that's what we did. So we moved with a 3-month-old. And it was crazy, like trying to move with a 3-month-old. Luckily, we never had to put our house on the market, and so that made it easier. But we moved, and within a few weeks, my feet started hurting really bad. So, plot twist. See, you didn't know I was going to start talking about my physical.
My feet.
But that's where we're headed. The whole story. Hopefully, it's not too long. Oh, I just want us both in it. But okay. So, my feet started hurting. I had a follow-up appointment with my pelvic floor therapist. If you don't know what that is, everyone should see one after having a baby. And she said, well, it's probably your shoes. Like, a lot of people don't realize that their pelvic floor and their feet are all connected. And she like looked at my feet and she's like, yeah, like you need to change shoes and there's some things you need to do. So I started changing shoes, and I started doing some different exercises, and it didn't get better. And at that point, I was also having trouble with lactation, which I always do with my babies. But I'd found out that my thyroid was a little bit taxed. And of course, I'm older, so I was 36-ish. And I'd been a midwife, and I'd been a birth worker for a long time. So I just thought, this is my lot. Like, I'm postpartum. I'm just tired.
I'm just old.
I'm just old. I just literally thought I was old.
You were. She was getting out of bed and just like, and like barely
hurt.
walk. It's like our 9-year-old dog when she gets up in the morning.
Yes, and she's like, got to work into it. I did, and I just thought I was old. Like, I really just thought, wow, pregnancy took a lot out of my body, which is hard because when we said we were hoping for our daughter, we were like, we want 2. If the Lord will give us 2, we want 2. And I don't really like being pregnant. And the whole time I was like, no, I'll do this again. And then even right after she was born, I was like, no, I'll do this again. And even at 6 weeks postpartum, when you're all sleep deprived, I was like, no, I'll do this again. But at about 5 months postpartum, I mean, I just remember being in her room and crying and just like, Lord, I can't have another baby. Like, this is taking everything out of me. And if you know me, you know I know a lot about nutrition and health. It's very important to me. And it's not important to me because I'm so strict. I'm really not. You'll see my kids eat stuff that I wish they would not eat. We're not strict when they're out in public. We want them to make their own choices. And sometimes I'm just a busy mom, and so we're not making the choices that I wish we could. But my hope is to steward my body well so that it can be as effective as it can be while I'm here on this earth, right? And so if we feed it well, we treat it well, then we can do that. And I know a lot about nutrition, and like nothing I was doing was working or helping. Okay, so the timeline is we are mid-2023 at this point. Well, towards the end of 2023, nothing's getting better, and we all get COVID. Robert got it really bad, actually, but we all got COVID pretty bad. And afterwards, I felt bad for a couple weeks, but then all of a sudden I felt pretty good, and my joints started feeling better. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Okay. Well, we also kind of went down the rabbit hole of figuring out if something else could be going on in our house. And I had read some things, and I was suspicious there might be some mold. And so we did some testing and found some spots, and we remediated it. And then we actually did a lot of work with the ductwork. And as soon as we did that, everybody started feeling better. Like, allergies went away. You started feeling better. You'd been having like anxiety, crazy, like panic attacks, not sleeping well.
For no reason.
For no reason. We couldn't figure it out. I'm thinking I'm just postpartum, so like I must be having postpartum anxiety, but like nothing I did to manage it, like what I would tell my clients would work. And so when we remediated the mold, we started feeling better. But for me, over time, my joints started hurting again. We had planned a trip that February to Mexico, and we were going to have to test to come back, to get back into the United States, and I did not want to test positive and be stuck in Mexico. So I took something that I cannot name, and so did you. We bought it over there as well, and we tested negative and got back. But my joints didn't hurt for a few weeks, and I thought, oh, it's because we were on vacation. Well, then a few weeks later, I got sick, I got strep and the flu, and I took that item because I thought, oh, maybe I have COVID. And so I just took it before I knew what I had. And regardless, I'd done some research on it and felt like it would help anyways, no matter what it was. And lo and behold, again, my joints start feeling better, and I'm feeling better. I just was like, it's weird, every time I get sick, I feel better. Why is that? And I chalked it up to, like, we would talk about it, and it's like, oh, it's because I'm resting. I remember at one point after maybe that sickness, maybe it was another one, and a couple months later, I'm like, man, it's so sad that I feel the best. Like, I'm so tired that I need to get sick to rest and feel better. So I continued to try all kinds of things to feel better. Around that time, I had a client come into my care that had Lyme. She had gotten that pretty young, and so they had done a lot of natural treatments. And I heard her kind of talking about her symptoms. We also are homesteaders, if you follow our channel, and so we would follow Justin Rhodes' family, and he has Lyme disease. And one day he mentioned his feet hurting all the time, and I thought, that's interesting. Like, I just thought that's interesting because my feet hurt all the time. And so I stopped and looked all of that up. And that was probably like around July, August maybe. And I was feeling pretty bad at this point. And couldn't figure it out. Nothing was helping me. Also had an endocrinologist appointment coming up. And so I just kind of thought, you know what, like, when I go see him, I'm going to tell him what's going on and see if he can run some more tests. He had run tests for like rheumatoid arthritis, like all kinds of stuff, and everything was just coming back fine. My inflammation, like on paper, looked fine. Just couldn't figure it out, and like I couldn't lose weight, and I wasn't even trying, I guess, that hard to lose weight because I was trying to nourish myself. But anyways, nothing was working. This is long, but it's the whole story. So, and if I would have heard this, it would have helped me. So that's why I'm sharing all of it. So by September, I felt awful. Like, I didn't even let on to him how bad I felt. I think I could admit to anybody how bad I felt, because it was like, if I feel like this for the rest of my life, like, I can't do this for much longer. Like, I can't do this. I can't do life. This is horrible. I couldn't think clearly. I even said at one point in September, I had a client that was going to be due, and if she went early, luckily I was off call at that point, and I said, if she goes, like, I'm going to have to send another midwife. Like, I can't chart. Like, I don't think I can think clearly. During that time too, like, you guys got the brunt of it. My family got the brunt of it. I would give everything to my clients because I didn't want my clients to suffer. I didn't want them to worry, and I wanted them to have good care, right, and be safe. And so I would just give everything to them, and I'm a pretty driven person. So I was able to just run myself in the ground and do that. But then when I was at home, you know, I was a little bit worthless. Done. I was able to do homestead stuff, but I mean, just not the way I would want to, and it took a lot out of me. So I got to the point where I was at the end of myself, and one night he was gone playing a show, and I just cried and just prayed and cried out to the Lord and was like, you have to help me. I need to know what to do. I need to know where to go from here. And that week, my client with Lyme, it was her last appointment, as she came in, and it was all, you know, rainbows and unicorns like the last appointment is. And as we were finishing up, I was like, would it be appropriate if I asked you some questions about Lyme? And she and her husband were like, yeah, of course. And so I started telling them my symptoms, and both of them were like, you have to get tested. And I was thinking, it's going to come back negative. I mean, my whole life I've been tired, which is why I just chose this job, because then I can just live in my tired. Like, it's expected to be tired. You're a midwife.
You had an excuse.
I had an excuse. It's so
it's
true. It's so true. It's true. I've been tired our whole relationship, except lately, but I've been tired. It's definitely, it's better now. But I'm like almost 40 and it's better. So, basically they affirmed me, and you need to get tested. So I took a few days, asked a few questions of my, like, in groups that I know, holistic people, and decided what path I wanted to take, because it's expensive and testing's always not that great. And did the testing. That took a few weeks. In that time, I also saw my endocrinologist and told him what was going on, and he was basically like, I think if you test for Lyme, like, it's not going to show anything, but I think you should. Like, you should see, you know, we need to do some alternative testing. And I told him I'd already found a practitioner, and he was like, great, go that route. And in the meantime, he told me to continue taking the thing that I was taking, because I told him that, the only time I would feel better is when I was sick. And he was like, well, what do you do when you're sick? And I told him, and he was like, well, that's a treatment for Lyme. And that's when it like all clicked in together for me. And so I left and started taking that regularly. As soon as I started taking that regularly, like my brain turned back on, thankfully, because that's when I was coming back on to being on call.
It was quick.
It was quick. Oh, like I still can go back just to think
Because
about
I remember like you getting the diagnosis and thinking like, oh, this is gonna be like a really long, slow.
Well, that's what
like,
people
road
say.
to you feeling
And
better.
it can be.
And yeah, I mean everyone's different. But
Yeah.
For you.
Oh,
was
it
really
like quickly, at least I had my brain back. Like that's what I would say. I felt like I felt when I didn't feel my best prior to feeling this bad. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like in terms of a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, which is where I was when I cried out to God. It took me back down to like a 6, And so I was like, I can function. I can do this. So I got the testing done, and then that in fact did come back that I had Lyme and Epstein-Barr and parasites, which is pretty common to have that with Lyme. And so I made the appointment with the Lyme doctor. They're called LLMD. He's an allergist here in Dallas that a few different birth workers recommended me to separately. So I was like, okay, this is the route that I want to go. But he didn't have any appointments available till the week of Christmas. And so I had to do my own research. And luckily, I know a lot about holistic living and dove right in on doing herbs and different treatments. And I would say pretty quickly, like I lost like 10 pounds. I was back to functional, kind of like when I was a student midwife is what I would call it, that level of like, I was tired, but I was like, I got a new lease on life already. Saw him in December, but because of ice and holiday vacations, I didn't get to start treatment until February. He sent me home with a bunch of treatment and a protocol to do for parasites. And I ordered all the stuff, but I was waiting until I was going to be off call for a time to do it because you can have something called a Herxheimer response. And we got iced in. And so I decided I'm going to go for it. Well, I'd been doing so much prep work that I kind of went all in on the homeopathic step. And that was rough. Do you remember that? I thought my head was going to explode legitimately. And the problem is once you start it, you cannot go backwards on it. You have to keep doing it. So I did that. And I started, I thought my head was going to explode and I had to figure that out for 3 or 4 days. But then when that fog lifted, oh my gosh, I felt so much better. So I think that was like March. So that catches us up to March. I want to go back to the spiritual side of it. That's the part. So in midwifery, why I talked about that is that one of my fears is obviously losing a mom or a baby. That can be part of life. And I just want to say, like, this is a scary thing to talk about. It's a vulnerable thing to talk about because I think it's scary when you put it out there because then I'm afraid, like, well, what if that happens? Like, just because I call it out and I'm going to tell you, like, how I get through it is my reliance on the Lord. And so then I'm like, well, please don't make me test that. Mm-hmm. The truth is he's made me test it. I've had so many stories where the Lord has gone before me and I've asked for that. I asked for that for all my clients, whether they're believers or not. That's the only way I practice midwifery. And there's been so many times that I've asked for him to show up right then and there, that I've got a baby down in the 60s and I need the baby to get out, and the mom's like not being able to cooperate with me, and it's just me and the Lord, and I've got to look at the Lord and say, like, I need you to help me, and he does. I've had so many stories like that I can't share because of privacy, but trust me, they're there, and that is the only way I practice. That's the only way I can practice as a midwife. And so because of that, it does require me to know my patients, to know my clients, to be involved in their lives and their care. And for me, this is the way that my practice has been set up is the way I want to set it up. And so the person asking me questions was like, well, can you just like work on an on-call situation? And I can, but like even working with my partners, that's why I work with them, right? Is because we practice similarly, and I need that. That's what I need. I need us to be on the same page and to practice similarly. And so he has shown up for me. I remember one time coming home after a birth, and I was coming back to your dad's house. And he was like, how was the birth? And I was like, oh, it was a doozy, it was. And I said, you want to learn to rely on the Lord, become a midwife. Like, over being a parent, because it's someone else's kids. It's not just your kids. It's someone else's kids. Like, it has just taught me to rely on the Lord to get through those fears in order to do this job, the fears that I talked about earlier. And I've just seen God show up so often, every time for me, for my clients, for these babies, always going before me. And when I got the Lyme diagnosis, I'd been on a journey of really understanding my faith since that summer. We'd had some interesting interactions and things happen at our church from a spiritual standpoint. And I was being faced with like understanding spiritual warfare and prayer and really growing in that through my pain, like through my hurting. And it all adds up, you know, I believe. It's all part of the journey that God had. And so that part had already been a work. And then now my health is becoming, you know, this thing that I'm having to rely on the Lord. And I got to a point where I knew that like I just had to rely on him, but I guess I didn't really understand what that was going to look like. And with Lyme, the biggest thing that they talk about is you need a low stress lifestyle. You need regular sleep. And then you need a lifestyle change, which the good news was my lifestyle change wasn't needed. Like I did extra of the things that are suggested, but the other two, I mean, that's huge. And I'm a midwife, like super stressful, life and death, and no sleep. And so it was like, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to deal with this? Another part of the story is that I did not have a relationship with my father. That was his choice. He chose to leave. He chose not to be in my life. And so I have been abandoned by my father, if you will. And so when people talk about like a relationship with God and like he's your father, even though I trust the Lord, I trust God. He's a lot of things to me. Like I said, he's gone before me in so many ways. When I asked, I couldn't look at him as a father. Because like I didn't understand that, and so I couldn't. I just chose not to. It's like I understand that I'm broken in that area, but I'm also just not going to choose to look at him that way because that'll impact my relationship with him, and I don't want that. So I chose not to. So this is the part where it gets interesting, and I do have permission to share this part of the story from my clients. Oh no, your battery's getting low. We were going to do it on my phone, and then the camera wasn't good, so I guess I have to hurry. So I had some clients in the time that I was starting to feel better and had a plan together and was feeling better, but knew like I'm gonna have to take some time off. And I just didn't know how that was gonna happen because financially we rely on my income as well as yours, right? And so that wasn't gonna work. And this is my job. I love it. Like I didn't want to do anything else. So if I have to work, this is the job I want to do. And so just wrestling with like, what does that look like? And I had some sweet, sweet clients, and it was their first baby. And they had really just prayed over their birth and given their birth to the Lord. They were hoping to have a home birth, did all the planning, all the praying. I mean, we were all just on the same page. I love this couple. I love this family. So excited for their birth. And once she went into labor, ended up being a pretty long birth, and she ended up getting exhausted at home, like clinically exhausted, where it was no longer going to be safe to be at home. And so we made the decision to go to the hospital. And the Lord, he just went before us in so many ways. So first of all, like they were really anxious about going to a hospital, and luck would have it that a few weeks before I needed to send them in for some monitoring. And when they went, they had such a great experience that when we had to go this time, it was actually less scary for them. And that was step one of how he went before us. Number two was we're on the way there, and I'm just praying like, Lord, give us the best doctor. Give us like natural friendly doctor that knows where we're coming from, that's like just so gentle with them. And I always pray that, but like, man, I was like so serious because I knew that would really impact how this went. And I get there to the hospital, and we're checking in, and this doctor kind of like flies around the corner, and she's like, hey girl, Keisha, hey. And I'm like, who's that? And I turn around, and the doctor's one of my favorite doctors I used to refer to, who's usually in private practice. So I assumed she was just there with a patient. And she was like, what are you doing here? And I told her. She's like, well, I'm all yours. for 24 hours. And I was like, what? And she's like, no, I'm the doctor on call. I just started. This is my second weekend. And I'm like, what? You're the doctor? So we had a total moment and we're so excited. And she was amazing. She was exactly who we needed to be there with them. The biggest cheerleader. So wonderful. So God answered that prayer. Then as the birth was happening, it just was getting to a point where like the baby was not happy and we were going to have a baby pretty soon. And I was getting very concerned and I knew this. And so I asked the family if I could step out and pray with their family, whom are all strong Christians. And they said yes. And so I walk out into the waiting room and I'm like, listen, we have to pray and we have to pray specifically. This is what we've got to pray for. And I like give them 3 things we have to pray for. We bow our heads to pray and somebody's like, Keisha, you have to come. And so I walk in and the baby's not doing well. And I'm like, oh, we got to have this baby. It's her first baby, though, and it usually takes time to push. One of the things we prayed for was that when they check her next, she would be ready to push. And then when she would push, the baby would tolerate it, and she would push the baby fast. All those things happened. She pushed the baby out in like 30 minutes. It was just so beautiful. Such a great birth. And I'm driving home, and I'm so tired because I've been up for hours. And it's like 5 a.m., and I just cry the whole way home. And I'm like, Lord, you showed up for them. Like, thank you for answering that prayer. But like, you are always showing up for my births. You're always going before me. You're always answering that in that way. But like, I need you to show up for me. Like, I need you to be my father. I need you to give me rest. I am so tired. I am so tired. I've got to heal. I need some rest. Like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? And just begging him. And we had a barn fire. It was a shed. It wasn't really worth that much money. It had a lot of stuff in it that was worth money, but it wasn't worth that much money around Christmas. Actually, the day that I went to see the Lyme doctor for the first time, which is interesting. I hadn't thought about that. And so I go home and I go to sleep. And on the following day, my mom and I are driving to market to buy for her boutique, and I get a call from Robert. And long story short, the insurance company messed up. They know they messed up. They're like, it's our fault. We messed up, but we can't change it. And they gave us a check that was like our total property loss for the outside buildings. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It was a very large, substantial amount of money, enough to allow us to make some financial decisions to let me take off. And in that moment, I instantly knew, like, God answered my prayer and he's taking care of me, because I would not have imagined that would have happened. Like, even knowing we had that insurance claim out, that wasn't even a fact. I'd kind of forgotten about it, I think. And he just showed up and he like just very clearly said, I am your father and I'm going to take care of you. And I knew that so clearly. Well, fast forward, my father suddenly passed away about a month, not even a couple weeks later. And that made me just kind of start to face all my feelings and resolve and come full circle in that area. But as I've processed like all of these feelings, we are in a place where we are just so open. And that's where I say we, so I'll bring you in now. We're really open to truly like what the Lord has for us in any way. Because when you've had God come through for you in so many ways, like in a tangible way like that, for me to take a break, in a very physical way where I'm feeling better, and just even as he's always taking care of my clients, my belief and my faith is just so strong in his abilities and what he can do. And I'm so grateful for the last 2 years and everything we've gone through to bring me to that place. And so I'm a very different person than I was 2 years ago. I'm a very different person. We are both very different people than we were living in Dallas 2 years ago, as we sit in Dallas today for our anniversary. Actually, though, even
Still
just
come here for the food.
Yeah, but even at lunch, we were like, we're so different. Like, we're
One
different.
of my friends tells me that I'm feral.
Yeah, feral. And that's not in a like good, bad comparison kind of way. I don't mean that, but like our life experience has changed us and like what we want and our desires. And our desires are just different. You know, a huge desire for us is to steward everything in our life well, down to our food and our animals and like how we grow it. That's just very important to us as best we can. Our time. We're trying to work on like stewarding our time well. And so, yeah, I'm giving up a career in some ways, not totally giving it up, but like I'm giving it. I might, you know.
Well, and you've struggled a lot with like, well, does me stepping away from it for a period of time mean that like I'm failing or I'm giving up. And we were sitting in church this morning and the pastor was talking about destructive patterns and like things that you're doing. And it's like, just because it's destructive doesn't mean that it's necessarily a bad thing. Something that you're called to can be a destructive for a period of time if you need to take a break. Like if you know,
well,
just because you're called to something doesn't mean that you're called to like put your head down and like sprint into it forever.
Well, and everything's for a season. I mean, I think the best pastors take sabbaticals, so it's not even about that. But, you know, I had to come to a place of like, I've been a boss babe. Just going to say that when that was a thing, I have been, I could keep being, and I'm choosing not to be. And it doesn't come without sacrifice. Like, it's coming with a huge financial sacrifice. But my priorities currently are just different for my family, and something I've been praying for since I think April now is capacity. Like, I just want capacity for the people around me. I want capacity for my family. I want capacity for my clients, the ones I have. So choosing to take which ones and when and how many, you know, to give them everything I feel like that I want them to have is so important to me. And so I don't have to do it the way everybody else is doing it. And I'm fine with that, because at this point, like, our life, we're not doing it the way a lot of people are doing it. And that's fine, because what we want and are called to is different than somebody else, and what they want and what they're called to and what God has for them. And so I don't expect everybody to understand my decisions.
Well, I'll speak for you, but I've spent a large portion of my life, and even being a person who is, you know, my exterior is like, I don't care what people think.
Yeah, you're better.
You do spend a large portion of your money and your time and your resources and your effort trying to keep up with the people around you to an extent, versus like, what does God want for me? And I'm gonna like focus on that and what's good for my family, who's also called me to, and not care what people think.
Yeah.
You know, because I know if you're walking with God, you know what you're supposed to be doing, and you just go that direction and let him figure it out.
Right. That's something I was telling Robert. So the last couple of weeks, even, I've had everybody been talking about GPS and road maps, and then at church we're doing, all of a sudden, our pastor's doing, what's it called? Paths.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is with this? But, you know, this idea that I heard on a podcast just this week of like God will reroute you when you take a path that maybe he didn't mean for you. And sometimes you go like way off the beaten path, and other times like you really think this is what he wants you to do, and he's like, okay, but I'm just going to reroute you. And just trusting that like your walk with the Lord is in your heart is so pure in that even when you get it wrong, he's just going to reroute you. And so that's kind of the place where we're at, is just trying to take it one step at a time, knowing that like, hey, it's a priority that I feel good. It's a priority for my clients that they're taken care of well. It's a priority for us that like we're able to spend time with each other. It's a priority that we have capacity for others, so we can speak, you know, truth into their lives or serve them well, which we haven't been able to do because my clients came first, my family came second, and then there wasn't really much time for anything else. So just all of those priorities. I don't know what the next few months are going to lead to. We do know that like those priorities are like serious to us and for us. And so we're taking that one step at a time. And it may mean doing things that people don't understand. Our God understands, the Lord understands. And if he's telling us to do it, we're going to do it. And his grandma's funeral was yesterday, and something his aunt said was that, you know, she just knew that if God said to do it, you go and do it, and that's it. And I was like, there you go. That's it. I love that. That's all you got to do, you know. So I don't know. I feel like that's probably not everything. I feel like I'm going to talk more about it. You know, gosh, my conversation with my friend on Thursday was just like, oh, so everything that I would want to share with everybody, and with such passion and genuineness and truth. And, you know, I was hoping to convey that. I think it's impossible to recreate that, but it's all in one place now, I guess. Is there anything you think that I should share that I didn't before your phone dies?
I don't know how much battery we have left.
Oh gosh. Well, didn't give me a 10% yet. You've only got a 20% so far.
20,
yeah.
So we have like 10%.
You got at least 10%.
I don't know. I mean, I was saying, you were talking to me about this like a little bit before we got on here, and I was saying that I've prayed, in the past, like, God, whatever you want, I'll do it, but I don't know that I ever really meant it, and maybe.
Well, we mean it, but like not.
Well, you mean it until it's like, but not that.
But not
There's always
that.
like something you're holding
Yeah.
back. And I think over the last few years, even though like we're very blessed, like God has like taken away enough things to where you like look at life and you realize what's really important. And it's like, okay, well, the things in life that are really important are also the things that God wants for you. And so if you giving up certain things for him to direct you and towards the things that are really important is what needs to happen for you to be happy and be fulfilled and like go where you need to in life, then like, why not? Like, the more you experience in life, the more you get older, the more places you go and things you do, the more you realize like, I've been fine without that experience.
Yeah.
Nothing is new under the sun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the interesting thing for me is like, again, going back to midwifery, like I worked so hard for this. And I did share with my preceptor last week a little bit of the behind the scenes, and I was like, you devoted 2 years of your life to me, and I'm so sorry. And she was like the most encouraging, most understanding. I mean, that's not even the proper words. It was more than encouraging and understanding on this. She understands, she gets it. And,
but just because you step away from something, I mean, God called me into ministry, for a church that I worked for full-time for 4 years.
More than that.
Before I stepped away, and then I went back part-time for
I
another 2
think
years.
you were there like 7 total.
And then I quit completely for a little bit, and now I'm on a very, very part-time at a small church right around the corner. Went from like huge church to small church, and like in like career path priority, looking at something like that decision doesn't necessarily make sense, but we're happier. That's where God led us. And
well, you're being so effective. Well, I know. I'm going to say you're being so effective where you are. It's such a need. Not that you aren't needed in those other places too, but like taking your experience from a very large church and putting that into a very, very small church with far less resources, like God's using you. Even though that doesn't make sense to the outside, it makes sense to him.
And that's where I was going, is like where, just because like the picture that we have in our head of what success looks like doesn't always line up with what success looks like. And just because you're there for a moment doesn't mean you stay there. God moves you around. And I say this a lot, but to be repetitive, God, like we think of life as like we start here and we're going here, and in reality God takes us here and then 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 here, and then we end up there, and that's just the next point.
Yeah, well, I always think of the saying that Pastor Ed Young would say. I think I'm gonna botch it, but he's preparing you for what he has prepared you for.
I think that's
right. Isn't that it? And so I just look back at just even my degree in psychology that I like so regretted, because that is the one thing I was like, oh, I regret that. Never regret midwifery school. I love that I've done that and made that sacrifice to do that. But even that, like the ability to use that to work with women, and I've been working with teens and youth over the summer and just loving that and being able to use that. But then my time with women is helping me work with the youth. I mean, all of it. And even just the journey.
There's our 10%.
There's our 10%. And even just the journey of figuring out Lyme, like it was a roadmap for me with my clients and the holistic lifestyle. And honestly, like I don't think I said this, I feel great. I turned it around so quick, and I have to be intentional and diligent with it. I still do. I do. When I have a birth and I'm up all night, like I can feel like junk real easy. So I do have to be careful. But I turned it around so quick because of what had been prepared for me, like all this healthy lifestyle, this living the way we ate. I mean, half the supplements that you're supposed to get, I already had and I already took, all these things I just was already built in. And that wasn't a huge at all. It wasn't even a lifestyle shift for me, except for just saying, hey, I have to slow down. That's kind of been the biggest, is just being aware of that. And that I'm still learning to do. And part of that and me stepping away from midwifery as the primary midwife has everything to do with that, you know.
Which we realized yesterday at the funeral of my grandmother, like my mom was a health nut. And I always knew my grandmother was healthy, my mom's mom. I didn't realize how much until we were hearing people talk at her funeral yesterday. And we were talking about how she was just such a person of regimen. Like she woke up every day, she took her supplements, she ate a healthy breakfast, she went for 2 walks a day, and did that her whole life. And she passed that on to my mom, who then we got married, and my mom passed that on to you.
Yeah.
And so that legacy, just through her faithfulness of like day after day doing the mundane and the repetitive, is now, you know, will go down through us and to our kids.
I hope it goes to lots of my clients and the people around me. So, well, before we get shut off, we should shut it off because I don't know what happens if your phone dies. I'm sure there'll be more lives, even if we're the only ones who watch them, talking about this, because I'm super passionate about this story of us. It's therapy for us, and like, I just want other people to be open to these kinds of experiences in their life and letting the Lord use their really, really hard. My clients that let me share the part of their story, like, they had given their birth to the Lord, and the Lord has used their birth to touch so many lives and is a huge part of my story. And I so appreciate them being willing to not only let me share it, but like to give their birth for that, to say, Lord, whatever you would have. And even though it didn't go the way they planned, they have such wonderful memories and thoughts around this birth because of their ability to let him use it. And so I think that example, you know, was a domino effect, right? Like for me, and I know other people in their lives. And so I hope that me being bolder and sharing this story with people in my life, they can just see how real and true their relationship with the Lord can be. I mean, we are just such in a new place of reliance on him, not even just because, we have to, because he has come through for me, and I do feel so much better. I felt so much better for months. But that reliance has stuck and has just been so nice and peaceful and easy and beautiful. So, okay, before we get shut off, thanks for joining us.
And to enjoy the rest of our anniversary.
Yeah, now we're going to go have more anniversary day.
Go to the club.
No.
No, we're not.
That's not what we're going to do. Right now it's like 110 degrees.
It'd be in air conditioning.
All right, y'all have a happy Sunday. If I can exit.